The grand arena of the infinite stood at the heart of the galaxy, suspended within a swirling nebula where stars were born and died in dazzling bursts. The arena itself was a colossal structure carved from the remains of a dying star, its surface gleaming with a strange iridescence, almost as if alive. Floating platforms of energy held a vast crowd, composed of countless alien species whose forms defied logic. A floating mass of sentient gas, six-limbed insectoids with reflective carapaces, and bioluminescent beings whose bodies shifted colors based on their emotions. The buzz in the air was palpable, an electric hum that resonated with the excitement of millions of minds. The Unwinnable tournament was about to begin, a once-in-a-millennium event where the most elite combatants from across the universe gathered to prove their worth. This was not just a contest of strength. It was a battle for supremacy, the culmination of millennia of tradition. Here, victories were immortalized in song and story, and defeats were whispered in fear. At the center of it all, the Cosmic Council, an ancient order of intergalactic elites, watched over proceedings with sharp, calculating eyes. For them, this tournament had one singular goal: to weed out the weak and crown the strongest. Yet, there was an unknown in their midst, a human, standing among beings whose powers transcended imagination. No one knew how they'd gotten here, but what they did know was that this earthling had somehow defied the odds to be here, in a place where no human had ever stepped foot. And yet, there they were, Max Donovan, Earth's lone representative, wearing the same worn-out boots from his home planet, a far cry from the hyper-advanced armor of his competitors. The crowd fell silent as the gates began to open, and the first round was about to begin. The galaxy held its breath, unsure of what would happen next. Max Donovan, the first and only human to ever make it this far, strolled into the prep zone with a nonchalant swagger that made even the most seasoned competitors pause. He wore nothing special, just a simple t-shirt emblazoned with a faded Earth logo, his old worn-out sneakers, and a pair of cargo pants that looked more suited for a hike than an intergalactic tournament. His equipment? A rusty old energy blade, and a shield that had seen better days. The other competitors, far more prepared, were intense in their pre-match rituals. A towering Trionyx, with 4 arms and glowing eyes, practiced complex maneuvers that bent the laws of physics. A sleek, liquid-based entity shimmered as it performed fluid, graceful movements in a containment pod, its shape constantly shifting. Meanwhile, Max stood casually in the corner, taking a swig from a water bottle, seemingly unfazed. One by one, competitors turned their heads, some out of curiosity, others in quiet disdain. This is it? The human? A voice echoed from one of the alien species, the Vrokian gladiator, known for their battle-hardened reputation. It was a whisper, but it carried enough weight to send ripples through the crowd. Max, unfazed, simply flashed a grin and shrugged. What's the big deal? It's just a fight, right? As the others practiced their ultra-precise combat techniques, Max was busy doing something entirely unexpected. He dropped down into a simple stretch, then started performing basic push-ups, counting each one aloud. 1, 2, 3, his voice, casual and almost mocking, echoed through the room. Some of the more advanced species couldn't help but vibrate in what appeared to be confusion or amusement. One of the more serious contenders, an imposing creature made entirely of interdimensional energy, bent its glowing form toward the human. "Are you not worried?" it asked, its voice like the hum of 1,000 voices. Max looked up, grinning. "Nah, I just like to keep it simple. Less is more, right?" The creature blinked, puzzled. Meanwhile, a few other competitors couldn't hold back their snickers. One of them even whispered to a colleague, "This will be over before it begins." But Max didn't flinch. As he finished his last push-up, he looked toward the arena gates and muttered, "Let's see what happens when you break all the rules." The tournament was a highlight of the galactic year, the Nexus Gauntlet, an event so prestigious that it drew combatants from every corner of the universe. On Nexus Prime, a massive floating arena suspended in a nebulous field of stellar dust, the stakes were nothing short of galactic supremacy. Fighters competed not just for glory, but for a chance to join the ranks of the ancient order of the Celestial 12, the most revered warriors in the universe. Their influence was unmatched, spanning across multiple star systems, and their combat techniques had been passed down for eons. And now, standing among the best of the best, was Max Donovan, the lone human who had somehow managed to earn a spot. Across the arena, the legendary Grandmaster Velcor, undefeated for over 5 centuries, adjusted his ceremonial combat attire. His glistening silver armor gleamed in the artificial light, forged from the rarest alloys mined from dying stars. His very presence bent the air around him, exuding an aura of calm and control. Velcor was known for his mastery of temporal combat, a fighting style that manipulated time itself. He could slow down or speed up the battlefield, leaving opponents in the dust as he anticipated their every move. His reputation was unmatched, and his place in the Celestial 12 was unquestioned. As the tournament organizers reviewed the challengers, Velcor's sharp eyes paused on Max's profile. Human, Donovan, odds of survival, statistical impossibility. A low chuckle rippled through the hall. The Vraxian warriors, famous for their fearsome battle tactics, exchanged knowing glances, their angular jaws locked in shared amusement. A human? In the same ring as us, muttered one of them. Max was a wild card, and the galaxy knew it. His abilities were unknown, his fighting style unconventional. But here he was, advancing through the ranks, barely breaking a sweat. Velcor studied the data on his datapad, his thoughts a perfect balance of disdain and curiosity. He will learn quickly that this tournament is not for the faint of heart. Across the tournament floor, the odds were being set. Max was pegged as the underdog, and his chances of winning seemed laughable. To most, he was nothing more than a distraction, a curiosity, a human in a game where the laws of nature were bent, shattered, and reconstructed in ways that defied imagination. But Max Donovan wasn't concerned with the odds. "I don't need to be the best," he said, his voice calm yet brimming with defiance. "I just need to be the last one standing." And so the stage was set. Velcor's traditions, honed over centuries, against the unpredictable chaos of humanity's raw adaptability. The odds may have been stacked against him, but Max had something that none of them counted on: the human spirit. Max Donovan stood in the preparation area, looking entirely out of place. While the other competitors were deep in their meditative practices or engaged in intense weapon drills, Max was sprawled on the floor, stretching like a yoga instructor in the middle of an intergalactic battle arena. With one arm extended and a leg crossed behind him in what appeared to be a complicated stretch, Max looked up at the odd assortment of competitors surrounding him. A Vraxian, a towering, multi-limbed warrior with a half-dozen tendrils slithering around, watching confusion. "Is this the human's warm-up?" It rumbled, its voice like thunder. Max, completely unfazed, stretched his other leg into a deep lunge and gave the Vraxian a friendly smile. "You got it, big guy." "Just making sure my hips are ready to dodge some heavy punches," he said with an exaggerated grin, as if it was the most obvious thing in the galaxy. Nearby, an Etherian, a race of hyper-intelligent gelatinous beings, slid closer, its translucent body shimmering with curiosity. "We do not understand. The human appears unprepared," it murmured to a companion, who only buzzed in response, its insectoid antennae quivered with confusion. Max, still upside down in a half-split, raised a finger dramatically. "You see, it's all about balance. Mental, physical, and emotional. I mean, if I can't stretch my body, how am I supposed to bend time, huh?" The Etherian tilted its gelatinous head. "You bend time?" it asked, its voice laced with skepticism. Max grinned. "No, but if I can't even bend my legs, how could I possibly hope to dodge Velcor's time loops?" The arena itself seemed to hum with tension as the other competitors watched, either shaking their heads or cautiously stepping back from Max's increasingly bizarre routine. He flopped onto his back, groaning as he stared up at the ceiling. "All right, now for the most important part, the caffeine." With that, he casually pulled out a thermos from his bag and took a long sip. The other combatants, most of them in the prime of their physical forms and prepared for the most grueling contest of their lives, looked on in stunned disbelief. "A drink?" Velcor's voice carried across the room, his presence looming as he observed from the other side of the arena. He stood stoically, watching the human with a combination of disgust and suspicion. This human is not serious. Max shrugged, not bothering to look up from his drink. You might be right, but I'll tell you this. I'm definitely ready for anything. And that, my friend, is my secret weapon. The murmur of confusion spread like wildfire. How could someone so casual, so unprepared, possibly stand a chance in a contest of such immense importance? Max just sipped his coffee, utterly unconcerned with the monumental expectations others had of him. Some things, Max muttered to no one in particular, are just better when you wing it. Max Donovan's first match was against a Kriller, a race of reptilian warriors known for their quick reflexes and deadly precision with energy whips. The Kriller, Zarin, stood across from Max, their eyes glowing with anticipation. The crowd's hushed whispers echoed around the arena, each spectator aware of the reputation of the Kriller's combat skills. Max, however, wasn't looking at Zarin. He was busy rummaging through his gym bag, pulling out what seemed to be a handheld laser pointer. "Is that a toy?" Zarin hissed, tilting his head in disbelief. Max glanced up, raising an eyebrow. "A toy? Nah. This is my precision targeting device. Super high-tech." He turned the pointer on, sending a small red dot darting across the arena floor. Zarin, confused but still determined, lunged forward with his energy whip. The weapon crackled with deadly intensity as he swung it toward Max. But Max, with a casual sidestep, dodged the strike. Still played with a laser pointer, like a cat with a laser. "Come on, you gotta be quicker than that, Zarin." Max taunted, grinning as he flicked the laser toward the ceiling. Zarin's attention wavered. His focus split between Max and the strange red darting around the arena. What is this trickery? He spat, trying to concentrate, but every time he locked eyes on the target, it moved again. Max expertly maneuvered around the arena, using the laser pointer to create distractions, making it impossible for Zarin to predict his movements. After a few disorienting moments, Zarin's whip missed entirely, and Max used the opportunity to deliver a perfectly timed takedown, sending the Kriller sprawling to the ground. The audience went silent, the absurdity of the match sinking in. As the announcer called out Max's victory, he stood, dusting off his shirt. "I told you it's all about timing." Max's second match was against the Tauron, a species of floating, telekinetically enhanced beings. Their control over gravity allowed them to manipulate objects and opponents with a mere thought. The Tauron Vilas floated high above the arena, eyes glowing with powerful psychic energy. The crowd held their breath as Vilas raised a hand, preparing to lift Max off the ground. Max, however, was too busy adjusting his hat and shifting from one foot to the other. "You're trying to mess with my head?" He called up to Vilas. "Nice try, but I've had worse. Ever try fighting with a hangover?" Vilas' focus wavered for just a split second, and Max took advantage, breaking out a move no one saw coming. He reached into his bag again, this time pulling out a beach ball and throwing it directly at Vilas. The ball, while harmless, sent a burst of telekinetic energy right back at Vilas, causing a brief shockwave of psychic interference. Max, in one fluid motion, leaped into the air, knocking the floating Tauron out of its concentration. Vilas' psychic hold faltered, and Max landed with perfect form. In a flash, he swept Vilas' floating body to the ground with a surprisingly skilled move, landing in an almost dramatic pose. The crowd erupted into chaotic applause as Vilas, dazed but unharmed, slowly floated to their feet, clearly bewildered. What just happened?" Vilas stammered. Max shrugged with a grin. "Not much, just a little unexpected." In his third match, Max faced a Mogren, a hulking brute whose skin was made of indestructible, diamond-like material. The Mogren's fists were powerful enough to shatter planets. The stakes were high, and it seemed almost impossible for Max to stand a chance. Max stared up at the massive, armored opponent. "All right, big guy, let's make this interesting. You take the first swing. I'll just be over here, finishing my snack." He pulled out a bag of chips and began munching loudly, as though this was just another casual day at the park. The Mogren roared in fury and swung a devastating blow at Max. With a quick step back, Max dodged the punch, but the ground beneath him cracked under the sheer force of the attack. He looked up, smirking. "Dang, that was close. But I think I've got a better idea." Max set his bag of chips aside, rolling up his sleeves. When the Mogren went in for another massive attack, Max wasn't there. Instead, he had slipped into a cartwheel and launched himself onto the Mogren's back, wrapping his legs around its thick neck. The Mogren flailed, trying to throw Max off, but Max was far too nimble. "You gotta keep your head in the game, buddy," he teased, using his own momentum to flip off the creature and send it tumbling to the ground. The battle was over, and once again, Max stood victorious. The arena was left in stunned silence. His casual, absurd methods had defeated some of the galaxy's most powerful and skilled opponents. It wasn't just luck, it was sheer unpredictability, and it was exactly what Max needed to prove that, despite all the odds, humanity was a force to be reckoned with. As the crowd slowly began to cheer, Max gave a quick thumbs up. "I guess I'm just getting started." As Max Donovan prepared for the final round of the tournament, Grandmaster THRYX, the reigning champion for centuries, sat in his private chamber, watching the recordings of Max's previous matches. The room, a silent sanctum of the universe's most esteemed combatants, was dimly lit, filled with relics from countless battles across time and space. THRYX, a towering being of molten rock and flame, had seen it all. He had faced warriors with psychic might, deadly precision, and unmatched physical power. Yet this human, this unassuming creature from Earth, was unlike anything he had ever encountered. "How?" THRYX murmured, his voice rumbling like an eruption of the deepest volcanoes. His glowing eyes narrowed as he studied the footage once more. Max had beaten a Kriller, a Tauron, and even a Mogren, beasts, aliens, and warriors renowned for their ancient combat skills. And yet, Max didn't follow any traditional combat rules. He didn't use strategy or finesse. He didn't even seem to take his opponents seriously. THRYX's massive form shifted uncomfortably, his molten skin flickering like fire. "This human," the old champion growled. "No respect for tradition, no honor in combat. His every action defies the very essence of the art." He ran a massive hand through the holographic display, freezing the footage of Max dodging a lightning-fast strike from a Kriller. THRYX studied the moment with growing frustration. It wasn't skill. It wasn't grace. It was chaos. He looked back to the hologram showing Max using a laser pointer to distract a Tauron. "Foolishness," THRYX muttered under his breath. "And yet it works." For centuries, he had trained in the sacred traditions of combat, learning the ancient techniques passed down by the greatest warriors in the universe. His style was perfection, elegant, precise, and deadly. Each move was designed to convey dominance, to show the supremacy of tradition. Yet this human, this chaotic force, had bypassed all of that. THRYX clenched his fist, molten cracks forming along his arm. He doesn't care about technique. He's disrupting the game. The realization hit him like a comet. This wasn't just a challenge to his reign as champion. This was a threat to everything he believed in. The way of combat, the very foundation of the tournament, was being undone by a human who refused to play by the rules. The fire in his eyes burned brighter, and he muttered, "I will crush this anomaly. I will show him the true meaning of combat." But deep within him, a nagging doubt began to form. For the first time in centuries, THRYX wondered if he was the one who was outdated, stuck in a cycle of tradition that no longer had relevance in a universe that was changing faster than ever before. "No matter," THRYX growled, "I will defeat him. I will restore order." As the final round of the tournament loomed, THRYX's mind was torn between his desire to preserve tradition and his growing understanding that Max Donovan was more than just an underdog. He was a force of nature, a wild card, and perhaps the beginning of something new, a change he couldn't yet fully comprehend. But one thing was certain. The last surprise was coming, and it would be a battle unlike any the universe had ever seen. As Max Donovan approached the final round, the arena's energy shifted. The previously vibrant buzz of the crowd now hung heavy with anticipation, a murmur spreading like wildfire through the stands. Spectators from all corners of the galaxy, beings of unimaginable power and ancient wisdom, watched in stunned silence. Betting odds that once seemed like a mere formality now displayed an ominous message: error outside parameters. Even the most seasoned combatants in the galaxy had placed their bets on THRYX, the undefeatable, the embodiment of tradition. But now, the inconceivable had occurred. Max Donovan, a human with no pedigree in the martial arts of the stars, had made it to the final round. In the Grand Hall, officials shuffled nervously, consulting holographic charts and recalculating the odds. They couldn't comprehend what had happened, and it was starting to feel like the very fabric of their established system was being torn apart. "This isn't supposed to happen," muttered an official, his voice barely audible over the rising tension. Competitors from all across the universe exchanged uncertain glances. The Taron warriors who had once laughed at Max's unorthodox techniques now shifted uneasily in their seats. The Kriller, known for their intellect and battle strategy, were whispering amongst themselves, recalculating their assessments. Had they underestimated him? Even Zarke, a mind-bending Tlanzi who specialized in disrupting neural pathways, couldn't hide the confusion. She had seen Max's unusual tactics in action, using laser pointers, improvised with distractions, and completely ignoring established battle norms. Yet, despite his lack of technique, he had systematically outperformed everyone. What is this madness? Zarke thought, her tendrils twitching in agitation. The spectators, now completely fascinated by Max's unconventional style, began to question the very essence of the tournament. Were the galaxy's greatest combat traditions outdated? Were they simply another way to keep the status quo intact, locking new, unpredictable forces out of the competition? In the VIP box, the Council of Elders, wise and respected leaders of the galaxy, exchanged skeptical glances. The Council had witnessed countless tournaments, each more predictable than the last, with only a handful of competitors ever managing to rise to the challenge. But Max was not like the others. One elder, an ancient being whose form constantly shifted between dimensions, leaned forward, his voice resonating with authority. "This is not just a fight for the title," he murmured. "This is a challenge to everything we've built, the way we've defined combat. Max Donovan is changing it." Outside the arena, the crowd swelled. News networks broadcasted the tournament across planets, each more incredulous than the last. On Earth, the news had spread like wildfire. Humans everywhere now found themselves gripped by the same question. Could Max really win? But despite the rising pressure, Max remained eerily calm. His eyes glinted with the same irreverence he'd shown from the very beginning. His methods, so unpredictable and so completely outside the galaxy's norms, had rattled the very core of this ancient tournament. "The odds are stacked against you, Max," said his mentor, an eccentric combat veteran who had trained in the most unusual forms of Earth martial arts. "But maybe that's the point. You don't have to play their game, you just have to win." Max nodded, his casual demeanor a sharp contrast to the intensity building around him. As he made his way toward the battlefield, the galaxy held its breath. His methods were unconventional. They didn't fit into the established patterns. But that was precisely why Max had come this far. And as he stepped into the arena for final confrontation, it was clear this wasn't just a fight for victory. It was a fight for a new way forward. The universe was about to witness the last surprise. The final arena, a vast, otherworldly battlefield carved into the heart of a dying star, hummed with energy. Pulses of light flickered as the celestial forces above cast their eerie glow on the combatants below. On one side stood THRYX, the undefeated champion of the tournament, an imposing figure, dressed in the ancient armor of his species, his movements precise and calculated. His reputation for flawless, measured strikes was legendary, and his followers chanted his name in unison, convinced of his imminent victory. On the other side stood Max Donovan, a human who defied every expectation with nothing but unorthodox tactics and a deep, unwavering confidence in his chaotic methods. He stood casually, stretching his arms and cracking his knuckles. The contrast between the two could not have been more stark. THRYX exuded the calm of someone who had studied combat for centuries. Max, on the other hand, exuded an air of unpredictability, like a storm that might strike at any moment. As the match began, THRYX moved first, a blur of controlled precision. His strikes were calculated, each one designed to incapacitate his opponent with minimal energy expenditure. He unleashed a flurry of movements so swift they were nearly impossible to track. His weapon, a razor-sharp, glowing spear, dancing through the air like a snake hunting its prey. But Max, with a grin plastered across his face, didn't flinch. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out, of all things, a rubber chicken. He swung it overhead, making ridiculous noises as he parried THR-Wax's spear. The crowd gasped in disbelief. Was this some sort of joke? THR-Wax's calculated attack faltered for a brief moment. His concentration wavered. "What is this madness?" he hissed, his voice dripping with disbelief. He quickly regained his composure, but Max was already moving in the most unpredictable of ways, rolling, dodging, and using the rubber chicken as an absurd yet surprisingly effective shield. In a flash, Max threw the chicken into the air, and as it sailed to the sky, he launched a quick jab with his own improvised weapon, a glowing broomstick. The broomstick whizzed past THR-Wax's guard, catching him off guard and sending him stumbling back. "You can't be serious." THR-Wax roared, now visibly frustrated. The air around him shimmered with energy as he shifted to his next move. The War Tornado, a deadly spinning attack that could slice through mountains. He charged forward, twisting with the grace of 1,000 battles. Max grinned, not even flinching. "Now that's a good move," he quipped, stepping aside with the agility of someone who had no business being in this arena. Just as THR-Wax unleashed his tornado of destruction, Max performed an astonishing roll under the spinning vortex, narrowly avoiding certain death. As THR-Wax's whirlwind of energy dissipated, he saw Max standing behind him, still casually twirling the broomstick like a prop. Max tapped the broomstick against his own foot. "I gotta say, THR-Wax, you've got some fancy moves, but have you ever tried this?" Without warning, he slammed the broomstick into ground, causing a cascade of glowing confetti to explode from the tip. It rained down on the arena like fireworks, filling the space with a colorful chaos. THR-Wax froze, unsure of how to process the surreal spectacle. This is absurd," he spat, but in the moment of hesitation, Max struck. He sidestepped and delivered a deliberate yet playful tap with the broomstick to THR-Wax's armor. "Gotcha," he muttered. "Now that's what I call precision." The crowd was silent for a brief moment, unable to comprehend what had just happened. The tension in the air was thick as the warriors locked eyes. For the first time, THR-Wax found himself on the back foot, facing not a skilled warrior, but a complete enigma, someone who didn't follow the rules. He clenched his fists, his sharp, disciplined mind now clouded by uncertainty. "No, this cannot be how it ends." THR-Wax growled, summoning his final, desperate move. His energy flared to its peak, his body crackling with power. But Max was already there, anticipating his every move with the fluidity of a man who had no need for tradition. With a flick of his wrist, Max threw the broomstick high into the air, its bristles catching the light like a glimmering comet, before launching himself into a wild somersault that landed him squarely in front of THR-Wax. In that instant, THR-Wax hesitated, the overwhelming power of his final move meeting the unstoppable force of Max's chaotic unpredictability. And then, with one final, ridiculous flourish, Max slapped THR-Wax's armor with the rubber chicken. "Gotcha again," he said, a cheeky grin never leaving his face. The arena fell into stunned silence. For a long moment, THR-Wax didn't move. And then, with a slow, begrudging nod, he collapsed to his knees. I have lost." Max grinned. "Yeah, you did. Guess that's what happens when you don't expect the last surprise." The crowd erupted into an uproar of disbelief and awe. In the end, it wasn't the force of tradition, nor the precision of 1,000 battles, that won the day. It was sheer adaptability, unshakable confidence, and a little bit of chaos. Max Donovan had won the unwinnable, and in doing so, he had redefined what it meant to be victorious. Max Donovan stood at the center of the arena, his chest heaving with a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. The crowd's roar still echoed to the vast structure, a cacophony of disbelief, admiration, and awe. The grand Colosseum, now infused with the energy of countless species, had just witnessed the unthinkable, A human had defeated the galaxy's most formidable champion, using nothing but unpredictability, chaos, and sheer willpower. THRYX, once the champion of 1,000 worlds, knelt before him, his armor tarnished and his pride shattered. It wasn't just a physical defeat. It was a blow to everything THRYX stood for, a challenge to the ancient traditions of battle that had shaped the galaxy for millennia. Max offered a hand, a gesture of sportsmanship that surprised even him. "Hey, don't worry about it," he said with a grin. "You put up a good fight. You just didn't expect the last surprise." THRYX hesitated, looking at the outstretched hand before accepting it. I have spent my life perfecting the art of combat," he muttered, his voice heavy with thought. "But you didn't fight by the rules. You didn't fight with precision. You fought with spontaneity. Chaos." Max shrugged, his grin never wavering. "I guess sometimes tradition needs a little shaking up." As the crowd's cheer reached a crescendo, the officials and combat masters began to gather around Max. Some were stunned, others were intrigued, and a few, those who had seen the finest battles the galaxy had to offer, were beginning to look at him with a mix of respect and confusion. "Max Donovan, you've just done what no one thought possible," one of the officials announced, a wizened, elder being from the Tsar species. "You've proven that there is power in unpredictability, that not every victory comes from precision and tradition. The galaxy will never be the same." Max paused for a moment, looking around to sea of faces, each representing a different world, a different tradition, a different way of life. For a moment, he thought about how much they had all valued the same old strategies, the same old methods. But now, they were witnessing something new, something fresh. "I think the real surprise," Max said, a thoughtful tone creeping into his voice, "is that we've been playing it too safe. Rules, tradition, they're fine. But sometimes they keep us from growing. And if we're not evolving, then what are we doing here?" He glanced down at THRYX, who was now standing, his demeanor different. No longer a champion on the verge of triumph, but a warrior who had been forced to question everything. "Perfection doesn't leave room for evolution," THRYX said, almost himself. "Maybe you're right. Maybe the future is built on the unpredictable." Max nodded, a rare moment of seriousness washing over him. "Exactly. It's the surprises that push us forward, the ones we never see coming." As the crowd began to disperse, leaving behind a mix of awe and confusion, Max turned to look out over the galaxy. For all its complexity, its endless rules and traditions, he had just proven that sometimes it wasn't about following the script, it was about rewriting it. Max Donovan, the human who shouldn't have been there, had done the unwinnable. And now, the entire galaxy would have to reconsider everything they thought they knew about victory, combat, and the very essence of growth. For a moment, Max smiled to himself. Maybe the next surprise was already on the horizon. As Max Donovan stood at the center of the now silent arena, his mind raced with possibilities. The thrill of victory was still fresh, but his victory had only just cracked open a new chapter for humanity in the galactic narrative. A comlink buzz in his ear and a familiar voice crackled through. "Max, you just shaken up the entire galaxy. Any thoughts on what's next?" Max glanced around at the wide-eyed spectators, still processing the unimaginable. "Next?" He smiled, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Let's just say I've only scratched the surface. The galaxy's full of surprises, and I think humanity's just getting started." He paused, taking in the distant stars beyond the arena. "Send me a few more challenges. I'm not done yet." Far across the galaxy, combat schools began sending frantic messages to their instructors. New training regimens were being developed, methods of strategy were being questioned, and age-old traditions began to unravel at the seams. The galaxy had just learned the biggest lesson of all. Humanity didn't follow the rules. Humanity rewrote them. And as the stars sparkled like 1,000 unwritten possibilities, one question lingered in the air. What could humanity possibly do next? "You haven't seen anything yet," Max whispered, stepping into the unknown, ready to unleash more surprises.